investments for petrochemicals with Invest Alberta, an investment attraction agency out of Alberta, Canada. I was hoping to present to you at the conference this week, but unfortunately, when I arrived in Seoul, I tested positive for COVID, so I'm currently in Seoul at a hotel quarantining. So I can't join you at the conference, but through the power of technology, they've enabled that I can actually make this presentation to you today and discuss some opportunities in investing in Alberta. So here I'm just going to share my screen if that works. So what I want to talk to you about today is investment opportunities in hydrogen, strictly speaking ammonia out of Alberta for Korea. So it is our understanding that the government of South Korea is looking to source fairly significant amounts of ammonia to support, number one, to satisfy its energy needs, and number two, to help reduce its carbon emissions. We understand that South Korea has been very progressive with its hydrogen economy, and you've developed a lot of the hydrogen mobility applications, a lot of cars deployed. I think you're one of the most progressive nations in the world in terms of cars and trucks deployed and fueling stations. And now you're looking at using hydrogen-based fuels like ammonia to reduce your industrial emissions and also to supply energy to your economy. So we understand that the government of South Korea and a number of companies are looking at sourcing ammonia globally, and we believe that you need to take a good long look at Alberta as a source for cost-effective ammonia. We think we're one of the top sources currently, and we think that we will be for a very long time, given some of the things that are developing in the global markets for energy, and also in various, basically the cost of energy. So when you're looking at sourcing ammonia, you're looking at sourcing it from a major gas basin. So we believe we're competing with some of the major gas basins in the world. Alberta is the fourth largest producer in the world, and I believe we could be larger. It's just part of the challenge is just where we are and our access to market. But basically, when you're looking at ammonia, you're looking at areas like the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, or the United Arab Emirates, Australia, the U.S. Gulf Coast, and or Alberta. Most of those jurisdictions they can put facilities at Tidewater. Alberta, unfortunately, doesn't have access to Tidewater, but we believe we can compete with the other major jurisdictions on the world. So when you're looking at evaluating sources for ammonia, we believe there's three main factors that should be looked into in the economics. The first one is the cost to produce ammonia, and here we're talking about either gray or blue ammonia, which is based with natural gas. So then we believe you're looking at basically the long-term supply and cost of natural gas in the various basins. The second factor that needs to be considered is the cost to ship. Various jurisdictions. This is mostly proximity. Any ammonia that's going to be sourced by South Korea is going to come by ship. So you've got to look at sources that can provide it and get it waterborne. And their ports are close enough to Korea to make it realistic. Because really you're consuming energy to move energy. So we believe you have to minimize the amount of energy consumed in bringing that energy to South Korea. So the third factor then is the total delivered cost. And this is where this being located at Tidewater comes in, and there's some factors that we think you need to consider when you have to look at it more holistically for the cost to deliver ammonia from the original source all the way through to ports in South Korea. So what we're seeing is everyone is seeing this right now. Everyone's aware of it. Is the strain on the global energy markets. So we're all seeing these prices, these high prices. Looking at it, natural LNG prices, spot prices in Holland, the TTF, the CME is roughly the CME forward pricing is around $100 per MMBTU. We've all heard stories about what they're paying for natural gas in Europe, and we also know that situation is not going to get resolved in the near term. They're going to be looking at extreme prices in the near term, but in the medium term, they'll moderate, but we still don't believe they'll go back to historic prices. The second thing we notice is that most of the major gas basins are tied to LNG. The Middle East, their major LNG exporters, Australia, the US Gulf Coast, and as a result, their pricing is tied to LNG pricing. The fact is, in Australia, they export close to 70% of their gas. So their domestic markets are directly tied to the international markets. So as LNG prices increase globally, domestic prices in Australia go up too. And what we're seeing here is a chart of the major markers in Australia. It's not really a liquid market, but you can see that on the far side, recent prices are trending over $10 per GJ. So, the fact is that gas is getting expensive in the major basins because they're tied to LNG, and they're going to be exposed to high LNG prices for the medium to long term. I don't think, again, the prices aren't going down. So this is something you need to look at. So the second piece is buyers are also exposed to shipping costs. Anyone that wants to import ammonia into Korea has to look at the cost to ship it. It's all going to be waterborne. You can use large ships, but you're still talking days travel. And days are then the ships go out at a day rate, and this exposes any buyer to volatile energy costs. You're basically burning bunker fuel, diesel, maybe you're burning ammonia, but you're expending energy to move it, and if that energy is expensive, it can seem counterproductive. So you need to look at the cost to ship from the various ports and see what is the most cost-effective option. So with that, we come to what we're looking at is the number of days travel, which is basically what you're paying. When you're moving it on ships, you're paying for the number of days that the ship is waterborne. So when we look at the various jurisdictions, we can see that in Alberta, we will be moving our ammonia through the port of Prince Rupert. Prince Rupert is the closest port to Korea in North America. It's a very effective shipping channel. And we're basically as close as Australia. We're within a day or a half a day of days travel with Australia. So we're as close as any other port, any major gas port to Korea. When you're looking at the US Gulf Coast, it's more than double, and you've also got exposure to shipping costs going through the Panama Canal. So it's more than just days travel. It's also other various shipping costs. There's a fee to move through the Panama Canal, and it's material. And same thing when you're looking at the Middle East, you're probably 50% longer than either Prince Rupert or Australia. So as energy costs continue to stay high, your shipping costs are going to be under extreme pressure just due to the length of distance from the port to Korea. So the next thing we're going to look at is of the major basins, as we kind of looked at before. Alberta gas typically trades at a discount to the U.S. Gulf Coast. We're a major producer, we are a major basin, but the fact is we're not directly tied to global markets. For various reasons, we don't have the same LNG capacity as other jurisdictions, so we're not tied to those markets. Alberta gas typically trades at a discount to U.S. Gulf Coast pricing, and strictly speaking, it's not a transportation discount, it's a market discount. We don't have direct access to U.S. Gulf Coast pricing. Our gas goes to the West Coast, or it goes into more of the U.S. Midwest. And the fact is, our infrastructure doesn't really, when gas comes on, it creates bottlenecks. So we believe, our gas will trade at a sustainable discount to the U.S. Gulf Coast pricing for the foreseeable future. What this chart is, when you're looking at it, it's actually the cost of energy. It's the cost of the gas per unit of energy. So they're not apples to apples here. The gray is the U.S. Gulf Coast Henry Hub, and it's U.S. dollars per MMBTU. And the blue is AECO, which is the marker in Alberta, and it's Canadian dollars per GJ. So you're not looking at a direct comparison. The AECO, the Canadian dollar is around 80 cents to the dollar, and a GJ is slightly smaller. So there's an adjustment. But what the bottom bar chart shows is the historic discount. Again, historically, it was around $1 to $1.20. Again, it's transportation plus, and then the second. But what we've seen in the last 6 to 8 months, when gas prices have got extreme, is the differential has increased to between, well, currently it's around $6 or $7. But we believe long term it'll be sustainably at $2 to $4. And we think this is a sustainable competitive advantage for gas in Alberta that's not going to change for a very long time. So then what we did is we did a fairly rough analysis of the impact on the economics of producing ammonia. This is based on a fairly simple model. Again, it's either gray or blue ammonia, so natural gas based. If you look at the production cost, this is a 1 million ton per annum facility with that costs about $1 billion to build. And the gas is roughly 75% of your production costs. So what we're looking at here is basically what we're saying is you can produce at $5 per GJ, you can produce ammonia for about $370 a ton at your plant gate. We've seen various governments and agencies look at future prices for ammonia, and they're basing their analysis on $2 and $3 and $4 gas, and we just don't think that's realistic. Hopefully we get back to $4 gas, but not in the medium term, right? So when we're looking at this at $5, it's about $370 a ton. At $9, which is the current pricing in the U.S. Gulf Coast, it's about $546, which is roughly a 50% premium to what you'd produce in Alberta if you were producing today. So if you're producing today in Alberta, you'd be less than $370 a ton, and if you're producing in the U.S. Gulf Coast, you'd be around $546. You can see the pricing in Australia; it only goes higher, right? So there's a material cost advantage to making your ammonia with this low cost gas. So what we've kind of covered here today is looking at the fact that when you're looking at producing ammonia, you've got your production cost, your production facility, and we believe in Alberta we're extremely competitive, and then you've got your shipping costs to Korea. And again, we're as competitive as we're the same as Australia, and we're better than the U.S. Gulf Coast and the Middle East. We're far more cost effective. But the challenge for us is we don't build our facilities at tidewater. Just due to the geography of Canada, we have a massive coast, but they're just not conducive to building facilities on the coast. So we prefer to build our facilities inland and then export, either by pipeline or in this case by rail. So what we've been working on, we spent about 2 years developing the idea of exporting this is by producing ammonia in Alberta and moving it by rail to the West Coast. So we've developed, a plan here is to build a transloading facility in Fort Saskatchewan and move the ammonia via rail out to Prince Rupert, where it will be loaded onto, major ocean-going vessels for shipping to Korea. The reason we're doing it this way is we believe what we'd like to do is do kind of common infrastructure, so it becomes more of a utility model. No one company would own all of the infrastructure; it's common, and therefore anyone that wants to contract it can access it. And what that does is that gets your utilization rates up, so that gets your cost per ton down. So we think by doing what we're doing, and you're looking at number one, higher utilization rates. And number two, potentially some government support. We believe we can create this hydrogen export corridor, and be able to get the ammonia from Alberta all the way through to Korea extremely cost effectively. We believe this export corridor will allow Alberta to be able to provide South Korea with ammonia at the lowest delivered cost. So, low cost natural gas and the export corridor will make ammonia produced in Alberta the most cost effective, we believe. And we believe this will allow South Korea to source a significant amount of energy, low carbon energy, long term at very cost effective pricing. So we believe as we develop this energy corridor, we will become the top source for cost effective ammonia for delivery to South Korea. We look forward to working with you. I would take questions, but obviously I can't. But some of my colleagues, I believe, are still around, and maybe they can answer your questions. If you have any, I apologize again, but it was beyond my control. Thank you.